Tim, I don't know whether God exists. I hope so for a whole host of reasons, including an afterlife that we all would like, but I don't know. Sometimes, rather than hearing all the arguments, does God exist and not exist back and forth, I like to assume that God exists and see what the implications are, and then judge whether God really exists. So to do that, we know that God is supposed to be the creator. So if I give you the fact that I believe in God and I know God is supposed to be the creator, what do you give me back?
What I give you back is our universe is just one of literally an infinite number of totalities of all different kinds, sizes, and shapes.
I mean, that sounds incredible. I mean, it sounds beyond anything that makes sense.
Well, we certainly don't observe any of that, but of course we observe what we're part of. We observe things based on our being causally connected to those things. If there are these alternative physical realities that God has created in addition to our own, we would have no direct experiential evidence for it.
Certainly. Now, physicists today, cosmologists, talk about multiple universes, so there are physical mechanisms that may generate that. That's a different approach that you're taking. You're reasoning from the standpoint of there being a necessary being who you say is has personal attributes, and that therefore you're concluding that personal necessary being creates an infinite number of universes, whereas theologians of the past would always go the opposite way and have a very limited world, and God was just creating the earth, and after you just got the earth, the people got nervous. And now, so you're going quite the opposite way that most theologians have in the past, are you not?
Yes, but I think there's reason to do so. It's not just because I like the idea of there being an infinite number of universes. It's really a couple of reflections, I think, that can powerfully push you in that direction, and I'm not the first person to think that if God exists, there likely are a large number of totalities beyond what we see. Those considerations are, first of all, however good you think our universe is, and of course there are a lot of negative features in our universe that give people very strong doubts about God's existence, the nature of seemingly random, horrific suffering. But there's a lot of good in our universe as well. But as good as it might be in its totality, it seems like you could always make it better. By adding more beings or adding some interesting variations on good things that we have. There doesn't seem any intrinsic upper limit on how good a created reality might be. Plus, there might be different kinds of good universes that you can't have together because they involve different fundamental ingredients. So they're incompatible with each other. Each independently is quite possible, but they can't together constitute one universe, that is one causally connected system. But if God, if we have our necessary being, and if we think of it along the lines of the way theists think of God, he's aware of all these possibilities, and he can create things, and it doesn't cost him anything. He doesn't expend energy when he creates things. So why would such a being be satisfied with creating just the kinds of goods that you get in a universe like ours, and not some of these other kinds of goods that you and I probably haven't the foggiest notion of, but that presumably are available to him? Why not create more than one, right? Plus, if you see that our universe has some kind of finite limit on its goodness, then such a being might think to itself, well, why stop there? Why not create a universe that's a little bit better than that? And the problem is there's no stopping point. No matter how good our universe is, there are always going to be universes that are better than it.
So you solve that problem by having an infinite number.
Right. So then the idea is the only way to solve the problem, since infinity is not a really big number that you get to at the end of a long chain. Infinity is the measure of a sequence that has no top element, right? So the only way you could create some sort of reality and not be left with regret that I might have done better is to literally create an infinite sequence. Now, it might be every single possible universe. That would be the biggest possible created reality. Or it might be every 10th universe, and mathematicians tell us we still get an infinite sequence either way. So that's why I think there's a motivation from the desire to create as best a kind of reality as it can to want to create an infinite number of universes.
Now, there is a difference between an infinite number of universes and every possible universe.
Yes,
there are orders of infinity.
That's right.
And which are you claiming?
I'm claiming simply a simple, the infinity of the natural numbers, the lowest order of infinity. That much I think we could have reason to suppose.
Why do you stop there? If you're going that far to make your point, why do you stop there?
Well, I think that the kind of goodness that a unlimited creator would have an interest in is not sheer amount kind of goodness. There is no highest order of infinity. Infinity is a really hard concept, but standard mathematics since the 19th century tells us you've got the infinity of the natural numbers, you've got the infinity of the real numbers, and there's no highest order of infinity. So if such a being were interested in sheer amount of goodness, there could be no number, not even an infinite number. They could measure the scope of what it creates. But I think we need to back up and say, well, why suppose that such a being would be interested in creating an infinite number of objects? Well, it's because universes, which are kinds unto themselves, they're kind of like objects to the mind of an infinite creator, they can be more or less good. And it seems that one wouldn't want the individual objects that one creates, wouldn't want there to be a limit on how good that object might be. And so that generates the need for there being no highest element of goodness. But if it's just sheer aggregate goodness, I mean, think about a master artist, who, say a sculptor, who puts out a beautiful sculpture of Julius Caesar, let's say. Would such an artist, if it had enough time, be interested in creating 1,000, 1,000,000, an infinite number of duplicates of that statue? Doesn't seem so. It would be interested in moving on to other interesting types of statues, perhaps. But the sheer number, just for numbers' sake, doesn't seem like it's the kind of thing that would motivate.
So your claim that God would create an infinite number of universes doesn't limit God's freedom to make decisions.
That's right.
Because it would seem if you're creating everything that there's no decisions, it just happens automatically, and so that everything becomes a necessity.
Right, and we want to avoid that result, right?
Okay.
But there are literally an infinite number of choices when you have an infinite number of elements, because you can create them all, as I say, or you can create some sequence, every other one, every third one, every googolplex one, and you're still going to get an infinite number. That's the nature of infinity. Intuitively, it seems like, every googolplex, followed by 100th power, seems like that would be a much smaller number of universes than if you do one corresponding to every natural number, but it's not. So you'd have, you can still have a great deal of creative variety going that route.